Hello there, everyone. Welcome to our webcast here today. James Hilliard on board as the moderator for this event, which is being sponsored by Samsung and brought to you by the team at Connection. We are going to focus on digital signage. We're going to look at driving increased sales and enhancing the customer experience, specifically with Samsung digital signage. And we have a lot to cover today, but that does not mean that we cannot stop on down and answer your questions or your comments or take a couple of little sidebars here and there. So a couple of invitations. Janet out there in the audience, Kevin, you as well. Carlos, thanks for being on board here, looking through here. Tiffany out there in our audience as well. I invite any and all of you to submit questions or comments at any time. You can just use a little Q&A here in WebEx. And what I'll do is I'll mix in some of those questions and comments as we go along for the event. There's a lot of stuff going on. Digital signs are not what they used to be. Even just say 5 years ago, there's a lot that has evolved in this space. So we've got two folks on board that are really going to kind of give us a level set, where things are now, where we're going to be moving forward to, and what types of applications digital signage are really being used for. We're going to try and focus on several areas in terms of verticals. Healthcare, I know we're going to have some examples there. Retail, food service, those are examples that are easily attainable. I know a lot of us come in contact with them as consumers. We have folks on the line that come from those as business verticals, so we'll have some examples there. And then we might even share some examples that might be from different verticals you're not in, but we'll try and make some connections if we can to how it might apply to your vertical. Or if you think of a way that, well, hey, could this happen in say, this vertical or that? Again, give us a question or comment, and we'd be happy to take a look at all that.
All right, thanks, James. So as James said, I'm Pat McCusker. I'm the Digital Signage Business Development Manager for Connection Enterprise. I am a Connection Enterprise employee. I've worked here for the better part of 8 years at this point. I've been in the AV industry for 15, doing some consumer, some commercial, so a little bit of every job in and out of the AV industry. I have multiple certifications. The one we're most proud of is our CTS certification, which is an ANSI Infocom standard. Very difficult to get to, tested every time we go out to the trade show, but it's a very prestigious award for us, so we're very happy to have it. So there we go. So we want to give you an idea of why you would want to deal with Connection Enterprise for digital signage. And one of the reasons is me. I don't like to toot my own horn overly much, but it's one of the big things that we as a national DMR have that other people don't, or national NSP, national solution provider, I should say, that others don't, which is an internal resource who handles all aspects of digital signage, all brands, and all facets that you can possibly conceive of. It's helpful in the way that we can find interconnections between different products, different product lines, and different verticals. So in that, we have diverse expertise in digital signage categories. So we cover pretty much everything. I personally have covered everything from federal and education all the way up through the Fortune 100 companies in the enterprise space. We have high-level partnerships with every vendor and every aspect of a signage deal. So not just with our friend Samsung who are on the call today, but if we needed to get a mount company involved, a content management company involved, we have those VP and C-level executive conversations on a quarterly basis with the companies that we deal with. So we're able to make connections where it may not seem important to you now, but when we need to fix something later on down the road or make something happen at a rather rapid pace, we can do that where most others can't. And 10 years of experience designing and selling digital signage to all verticals. And we see that as a huge strength because we're able to pull examples and concepts from other verticals and apply them to perhaps your vertical in a way you haven't thought of. We have some examples of that later, and I'll sort of go into those a little bit. To give you an idea of what our offering is, basically our offering is My Group. So we have the ability to give a free digital signage consultation, either pre or during a project, or we're even able to talk refits. We're able to talk about pretty much any aspect of a digital signage system. If you need to talk content strategy, if you need to talk about panel specifics, you want to talk about mounting standards, we can have deep conversations about every aspect of that system. And what we see as the digital signage system looks a little bit like this, and it's something of an industry standard. So every digital signage system you have will have each one of these elements built into it. Help with design, help with the software that runs the system, content that plays on the screen, the hardware being the panels and the mounts, connectivity, how it connects to the content management. But more importantly are those operations and business reasons. So how does it get on the wall? How do we work with architects to make sure that we're using the right mount, we're using the right standards for Americans with Disabilities Act, and business reasons, return on objectives, why you're putting it there, and can we return either on objectives or on the investment that you're putting into the gear. All of those are conversations we're willing to have and capable of having. To give you an example of some of the pieces inside of that framework that you may not necessarily think of us for, the first and most important of those is content management. So we carefully curate and select a profile of content management providers that can handle deployments from one screen all the way up to several thousand. The real reason why we pick them and curate them so carefully is we make sure that they have excellent back-end support. They're able to handle the volume that some of the larger companies that we deal with are able to throw at them. And not only that, but they take care of you when there's an issue. So anything you need to know about that, let us know. We do also handle content creation services. So we do have that sort of turnkey approach if you want it. You can either do sort of a fully built, fully designed system where you hand the reins over to us, or we can give the control all the way to you, or somewhere in between. It's really up to you and how you use that content management. So getting your signage up and running. So installation, this is sort of a two-part piece. We talked about design, we talked about installation, but design and pre-planning for the installation is one of the most important aspects that we engage in. The video wall in question on the screen right now is actually being installed by our technicians. But we worked with the architects to make sure that the venting at the bottom of the video wall and at the top of the video wall existed. It wasn't in the prior designs. And we took this video wall, which was designed to be a 5-month project, and turned it into a 5-year video wall that's still currently running today. So again, we went from design all the way through installation, and we held their hand every step of the way and made sure that it worked as well as they'd like. So with some of these use cases, business operations use cases that we have, we're finding that a lot of data points, rich data points, are becoming pieces of the content delivery system or content management system that you're looking to display. So an example is in healthcare. If you're trying to get information from Cerner or Epic and want to get it out on a screen in an attractive and easy to read way, we can make that connection within a content management system, create a template for it to be displayed, and make it show up in real time, daily reports, however you like to see it. Examples, nursing stations or patient check-in systems, stuff like that. And that translates over to stuff like manufacturing, where that same type of data connection is being made between a manufacturing machine and the screen. So anywhere you have data that isn't easily visualized or easily seen by the people who you're trying to get to see it, that's something that we can help with, and something that a lot of people don't necessarily think of us for. So that's just a quick, very brief overview of some of the things you may not know we do, or may not even know that you need. So that's part of what we bring to the table. We're also here to talk today about what Samsung brings to the table as our top digital signage display company. So from here, I want to turn things over to Shari Sentlowitz from Samsung to go over their stable of offerings.
Great, and what we'll do is we'll unmute Shari's line. And folks, what I want to remind all of you to do is if you do have questions or comments, I've already got a couple in here about some wayfinding questions and things like that. If you have those throughout the presentation, feel free to submit those to us, and we'll surface them as needed. Shari, I see we've got your line unmuted, so with that, I'll throw it over to you.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. From what I understand, those of you that are on the call most have interest in either healthcare, retail, corporate, or even restaurant, QSR, and food service. If there are any other vertical industries that you're interested in, if you can put them into the chat while I go through this presentation so that I have the opportunity when possible to refer back to it, that would be great. All right, my slides are not moving. Hang on. All right, a little bit, I'd just like to start a little bit off by talking a little bit about Samsung. I'm not sure how many of you are really familiar with Samsung and what we do. Many of you may be familiar with us as, as a consumer company, whether it's phones or televisions or other devices. But we are at the forefront of display technology, not just in the home, but also for commercial. And this is a little bit about us. We're very large, 15 regional headquarters across the world, and we employ over 325,000 people in 84 countries. We are the indisputable industry leader when it comes to display. We have been #1 in the world for 8 years. And part of the reason that we're #1 is that we have a very strong commitment to R&D. So $12.1 billion of our revenue is spent on R&D, and about 1/5 of our entire workforce is involved in that R&D in 34 centers across the world. And we're the #2 patent holder in the U.S. as well. When you look at different brands, whether they're electronic brands or just general consumer brands, we rank #7 in the world for consumer brands. And, that is pretty significant when you think about all the other brands that are up there and global brands. Now let's talk a little bit specifically about displays. Wherever you look, there is some type of display, whether it's a handheld one in your, as a phone, a small kiosk like a 10-inch, for example, something in an ATM, or, these very large video walls, or the old name that people used to call them, the jumbotrons, right? They're everywhere. Every industry out there has a use for some type of signage. So think about airports and train stations. Think about how you're able to look up at the latest schedules, or be able to wayfind, whether they're interactive or they're static signage. Shopping malls are using digital signage just to increase foot traffic, or even just to entice people to potentially buy a product. Corporate, it's not just used for the meeting rooms, for example. They're used for lobbies. They're used for wayfinding. They're used to set a general atmosphere. Digital out of home. Think about when you drive anywhere. Think about all those large signs that you see now that used to be these static displays, or now these very large outside LED displays. Or when you drive to a gas station or through a quick serve restaurant, you see these displays that are outside with menus. Those are other examples of digital out-of-home displays. Hotels, not just the televisions that you're watching in the room, which, believe it or not, they look like a television that you would have at home, but they're actually, most of them are very special hospitality or commercial grade displays. And hotels are using them also for art in their lobbies, for concierge services, etc. I mentioned QSR, cinema. It's about menu boards. It's about coming attractions, and soon to be, some cinemas will have LED cinema technology. So that's a space that's really evolving. When we talk about public space, let's talk about any type of space that you visit, whether it's an amusement park or a museum. They all have uses for digital signage to really engage and enhance the experiences of their customers. In sports arenas, from just wayfinding to VIP lounges to score boards, etc., all great places where digital signage is used today. Now, Samsung has a broad portfolio to meet any of those places. So from starting in that hotel room that I mentioned before, which is the smart hospitality display, to being outside in rugged environments or outdoor displays. When we talk about standalone, we talk about those displays that might be full HD or Ultra HD/4K that might be used singly or multiples in different spots in the same environment. And then we have video wall displays, your traditional video wall displays, which have a bezel and have a seam. And then we have smart LED signage, which creates a completely seamless LED video wall. And then we have different types of interactive displays. So you have your interactive displays, which many refer to as interactive whiteboards that are great for education or great for meeting rooms and conference rooms. We also have touch displays that can be used in any type of environment, retail or even restaurants, where you can then, actually touch on those displays. You can look up at different information. We have some specialties displays, not pictured here, for example, like a mirror display. So it's actually a mirror with digital signage like qualities. And we have these stretch displays that are unique in the sense that they fit in different areas that your traditional display might not fit. So why adopt digital signage for your business? Well, first and foremost, digital signage really helps you engage and interact with your customers way more than static signs can do. And they're also a lot more environmental friendly. When you talk about engage and interact with your customers, 93% of customers check out displays and signage inside a store when entering. It also helps to bring more traffic. So 32.8% more traffic when you use digital signage. And even though this might seem very retail-oriented, it really expands across any of the different verticals. Let's talk about increased recall and retention rate. Think about watching a commercial. You watch it once, you watch it twice, you might not really remember what the product is for or what the advertisement's for, but you might remember a little bit about it. You have to watch it a few times in order to remember, right? So that's very similar to what static signs do. It's like you pass it a few times, you see it, you remember it, but you really don't remember it. Well, digital displays capture 400% more views than those static displays, and their recall rate is significantly higher, but 83%. So that's really important, when you're thinking about expanding your business and increasing foot traffic and sales. Sorry, guys. So obviously, you guys want to increase, your business. So let's talk about increasing revenue. When you have digital signage, those eye-catching images and video can strongly influence purchasing decisions, or even decisions where people are going to come and ask additional questions that will lead eventually to a sale or to an enhanced service, etc. And with 60% of those purchasing decisions that are made at the point of sale, you really need to be able to capture their attention. And when you look at retail, 29.5% increase average amount, purchase amount when you have digital signage. And 30% of customers who have been in a store with digital signage have made an unplanned purchase as a result. So think about those lines that people are standing on. When you use digital signage, for example, when people are in line, or they can see them when they're waiting in line, or even walking around the store, there are purchases that are made and influenced just by the customers seeing that content. So I guess pretty important is that digital signage is very easy to deploy, especially when you work with partners like More Connect. So it's not only easy to deploy, but it's also very easy to maintain. So whether you have a few signs in one location or you have them across a complete network, you can use management tools that can allow you to easily update and send out messages, whether you determine to do it from a centralized location or from multiple locations or what we call hub locations. So very easy to be able to do that. And there are services, as I believe Patrick mentioned, for content development. Now, if you want to lower your costs, one way to lower your costs for your business is to stop printing as many printed materials that you are doing today. And it's not just the printing that costs money; it's the design, and it's the delivery, and it's the installation, and then it is in many cases getting rid of that signage once it's obsolete. So digital signage is a low-cost and environmentally friendly way to be able to get your messages across, and it also allows you to react to the market conditions, whether it's a competitive condition that you want to react to, a stock level, or maybe you're changing your menu, or maybe your services have changed within your doctor's office, or maybe there's information that you need to get across to your employees that you need to change on a timely basis, much better than having to run across a campus or, anywhere within an organization to pin up a new poster or send out an email that might get lost. So now that we've talked a little bit about what are the advantages of digital signage, let's talk a little bit about why choose digital signage with system on chip. And I'll back up a little bit because maybe some of the folks on the call don't know what system on chip is. So really what system on chip is many of Samsung's digital signage displays include an integrated media player. And with that integrated media player, there's an actual CPU and there's actually a signage platform. So those all work together so that you don't need to have an attachment like a PC or an external player to be able to run and load and schedule your content. So it really simplifies the installation of your deployment, and it really helps you manage and reduce your total cost of ownership. So no need for a set-top box. All you need is that power source and the internet, especially if you're going to network them. When you use the media player that's integrated into any of Samsung's digital signage displays, that means you have less hardware to maintain as well. And you also reduce the point of failure. So sometimes you might have a failure with a digital signage network and you don't know if it's the display or if it's the player or the PC. This way, you're able to pinpoint the point of failure if it should happen. Also, by using less devices, you're using lower energy consumption and therefore saving you money in that regard as well. And because the system's on chip, and most of our displays are full featured, with the exception of those that say light versions, you have the ability to play many different types of content. You can create reporting, etc. You really just need this player on the chip and using the smart signage platform. So this is an example of how SoC, or system on chip, makes onboard digital signage possible. This is an example of our PMH series, which is a full HD series display, commonly used for menu boards because it is a very robust 24/7 operable display that's also grease and dust resistant. But really important here is that system on chip media player. So as I mentioned before, it has a quad core processor, it has onboard memory, and a video process and storage. Now, the amount of storage and the amount of memory will be different depending on which display that you're buying. But this gives you an idea of how easy it is. It's an onboard computer, you can think of it as. So why smart signage? So if you look at traditional signage, which is typically a non-smart display that's connected with a separate media player or PC, it has increased cabling and energy and installation costs, and you need additional content management software. When you look at Samsung's smart signage platform, you already have that embedded media player that's powered by a quad-core processor. You have that onboard memory for content storage. And our Magic Info software, which is our platform, you can develop and manage content. And if you're a partner and you want to develop additional things, there's an SDK for partners to leverage. So it's an open system. And deploying a smart signage system, as I mentioned, simplifies deployment deployment and reduces the total cost of ownership by 31%. So I mentioned before, we're going to talk a little bit more about 4 key industries, and we're going to start with healthcare. So why digital signage in healthcare? So digital signage in healthcare can be used in so many different ways. And you'll see as we discuss a couple of these verticals, there are very common themes throughout where they can be used in the same way or fashion throughout these different verticals. And these lists that I give you here as to why digital signage in a particular vertical are not all inclusive. These are just some of the ways that they can be used. Let's talk about digital signage in healthcare. So how do we connect with our patient? How do we connect our patients with wellness, right? You walk into different hospitals, you walk into different doctors' offices, you see that there are brochures and flyers, in the waiting rooms, et cetera. And sometimes those are necessary, but sometimes, you really can use those digital displays to communicate the same information. You also can use them to communicate office hours, policies, anything that you need to communicate to your customers. And at the same, as your patients, and at the same time, you can use those displays to entertain the patients and be able to enhance that experience of them sitting there and waiting, whether it's the patients or maybe the guests that are waiting with them, the family members. And when you do that, you're able to reduce their perceived wait times. They get less agitated, and you keep them busy. Another great way to use digital signage in healthcare is patient registration. So using a digital touch screen to check in or to even fill out information is definitely a way that digital signage can be used in admitting offices or in a private office. And patient education. Sometimes we need to educate our patients about, potentially the disease that they have, or give them access to education to make some type of decision. This is a great way to be able to use signage, whether it's in their hospital room or whether it's in a private office. And always digital signage can be used to engage those patients and guests with dynamic information, so real-time data on wait times or patient status, et cetera. So you go into a hospital and you have a loved one that's going into surgery. You're given a patient number, so there's no worry about you actually seeing a name up on that digital signage. You take that patient number and you can follow that patient number on the digital signage throughout the hospital and the waiting areas to find out exactly where your loved one is. So that's just one example of how it can be used to engage patients with dynamic information. An obvious way is wayfinding. It's very overwhelming and stressful when you need to be in a healthcare facility, and the last thing people need is to get lost. So whether you use interactive or touch to help them find their way, or even static signs to help navigate. Emergency alert, this goes across every vertical. You can always use a digital signage network to act as an emergency alert system when needed. Clinicians' dashboards. Think about patient dashboard solutions that doctors and nurses and staff can use as an information hub to discuss real-time patient information, to monitor patients' information, or even scheduling and daily agendas. As a healthcare institution, you still need to increase revenue. So promote your services, your gift shops, and even your events through digital signage to all visitors, and you can even sell advertisements to third parties. Employee and staff always need to be kept in the know, and they need to be communicated with and trained. And you can empower your employees and keep them updated using digital signage. And one way hospitals, are able to continue on and act is with donor walls and fundraising. This is a great way to be able to recognize your patrons by creating interactive and engaging video walls to recognize them and attract new ones, as well as promote your latest fundraising activities. Here are a couple of examples of digital signage in healthcare, just some ideas between wayfinding, patient education, dashboards, and check-in or waiting lists. So we're going to talk a little bit about digital signage in retail. Retail is probably one of the largest places where digital signage is used today. And when we talk about retail, we can talk about food stores, we can talk about your malls, and we can even talk about restaurants. They all sort of fit in that genre of retail. And the main reason why people are using digital signage in retail is to increase store traffic, increase their brand awareness. And the way that you do that is by using these eye-catching, these moving images that are going to attract people before they actually enter the store. Because the customer journey really begins before they enter the store. You need to be able to attract them and draw them in. And if you use digital signage, you're able to deliver the maximum impact to customers, much more than you can by using typical posters in the windows or in the stores. Digital signage also allows you to create a personalized shopping experience that will drive sales. So whether they are interactive or static, you're able to help that customer through their journey make a decision and be able to find what they're looking for. And then you can increase sales with visual merchandising and cross-merchandising. Think about all the different types of promotions a retail place may have. And you can use that to effectively merchandise and cross-merchandise throughout your store so that you can promote and drive impulse purchases as well as those planned purchases. We mentioned before that a high amount of customers purchase based on seeing information in the store. You can highlight product stories, upsell, and even suggest complementary items by using digital signage. You can optimize shopping and increase sales by providing customers with the information that they need. So what do I mean by that? So if a customer is looking for a particular size or color in a garment or a size in a shoe and you don't have it, they can simply go to a kiosk that is powered by digital signage, and they can look and they can see whether or not it's in a store that is near them, or even be able to order it right there online and have it sent to their home. I mentioned before about perceived wait time. The thing that bothers most patients or even customers is the fact that they have to wait. If you can if you can decrease the perceived amount of wait time, you're going to have happier customers. And when you have digital signage on checkout lines, you're able to give relevant information that reduces that boredom and that frustration. You're able to decrease those perceived wait times and increase that customer satisfaction. And you can even capture more impulse sales. Think of it as eye candy, or just like if you're standing in the supermarket, they have all those items at the checkout counter that they want you to buy impulsively. Digital signage can do the same thing for you for items outside of just candy. And I mentioned earlier, reduce the communication costs and environmental impact by using digital signage. Get rid of those printed signs and the labor and all the costs involved with doing that. So digital signage in corporate spaces. This image here is an example of one of our newest products. It's our LED video wall. It's a 1.5 millimeter pixel pitch, and it's a 130-inch wall. So this is actually made by 6x3 cabinets. So there's actually 18 cabinets that make up this, and this is great for not just corporate spaces, but for any place that is looking for an eye-catching video wall with really immersive content. And for a corporate space or even a hospitality space, this can be used as eye candy. It can be used in a conference room in place of a projector or in place of a large, for example, 65 or 75-inch display, or in place of a traditional video wall. So digital signage for corporate spaces, depending on how large the organization is, it can be used for outdoors or indoors, for wayfinding in digital directories. Think about lobbies. You want to make your lobbies as inviting as possible, not just for your visitors, but for your employees as well. And you can use large signage or video walls, whether they're traditional or LED, like I just showed you. Digital signage is great for those common areas to be able to display news and announcements or any type of activities or anything that employees or even visitors will need to know. It's also a great place to call out employee achievements as well and recognize employees. Many corporations have their own cafeterias or small eateries. It's a great way and a great place to use menu boards to promote what's to eat, and it allows those eateries to be able to easily change and adapt menus, whether it's from meal to meal or prices or seasonal changes. And executive offices, a lot of executive offices have some type of display in their office to be able to use for meetings or for displaying critical content. You can put them up on the wall as well to create social dashboards or critical info dashboards. And you can have interactive displays for presentations and meetings. One of the coolest things that we just softly launched is something called the digital flip. And it's just think about a flip chart with paper. We've replaced that and created a digital flip chart that allows you to have all that functionality of that tangible flip, but in a digital format, and it's mobile. So from executive office to conference rooms or to huddle spaces. In those conference rooms and huddle spaces, video walls are a great way to be able to share that content in place of projectors. And I mentioned that digital flip, also a great place for those as well. And then think about collaboration solutions for those conference rooms and executive offices. They all need some type of display. So Harman and Samsung are going to be launching in December some really great solutions for those types of spaces, for huddle room spaces that allow you to be collaborative, whether you are remote or within the office. And most corporations and even hospitals and retail, they have some type of training space. So think about the needs for those training spaces, whether they're large displays or small huddle spaces. It's a great place to be able to place those. And when those are not being used for educational material, they can be part of your larger signage network and be able to communicate information throughout the network. And as I mentioned before, emergency alerts. It goes to any vertical in any signage network. The last vertical that we're going to touch today is like foods and restaurants. Foods and restaurants use digital signage both inside and outside for menu boards, inside and outside. Also, to be able to bring people in, they have promotions on them. And what's great about this is that menu boards really allow these types of organizations to be able to make these changes automatically based on time or day, audience, or whenever it's needed. it also allows them to be easily able to update menu boards to comply with health care regulations. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the rest of these on this page because we really discussed them in the other industries. But just so you know, there is a place for menu boards. Whether you're in a traditional restaurant or in a hospital or even in retail or corporate. So these are just some ideas of where these displays can be used and how they can be used. And now I'm going to send that back to Patrick.
All right. So if you want to know more about what Connection Samsung brings to the table, we have a couple of resources for that. We have our digital signage portal on our website, which has a video series kind of going over the basics of digital signage elements from commercial versus consumer displays, how content and content development work. If you'd like to see links to that, we can send them out to everybody on the webinar, or feel free to ask your account rep or send an email to me if you have my contact information. So if anybody is interested in any of the concepts you heard today, either from Samsung or from myself, again, we sort of kick this process off with a free consultation with myself and with your account executive. Feel free to reach out and schedule that at any time. It can be as quick as 15 minutes or as long as an hour, depending on how deep in the weeds you want to get with it. Other than that, I think we're all set. I'll pass it back over to James.
And Pat, I bet if someone wanted to go more than an hour, you'd give them that time too, because I know you would.
Fair to say.
We've talked about that before. But hey, folks, we do have some time here for some questions. A couple of filled up in the queue here. I'll invite you all again. If you have questions, feel free. And something I'm interested in, this is just something that would be maybe fun to do here on the event. If any of you have seen kind of a really unique usage, then I'd love for you to share that. And in fact, I'll start off with one that I saw, and I'll just bounce it off both Pat and Shari. But it was a local, smaller, I'll call it like a boutique type grocery store. And they had a digital display. A video was playing showing a recipe. And then there was the ability to buy all the products. One, they had them all there on display, but then there were some links to get the recipe, to print that out, stuff like that. I thought it was a really cool interactive use of a digital display. Pat, have you seen other things like that? What have you seen kind of on the cutting edge?
Well, I mean, that's a big answer. One of the things, and I, like probably many people, jumped out and hit the retail stores after the holiday this past week, and that's where I'm seeing a lot of the big innovations in just use of technology, not necessarily in, hey, we've used the new technology that no one's seen before. I was in a 2-story retail store in downtown Boston last week. And along the stairs, if you look to your left, following you up the stairs was a direct view LED wall, and then Shari hit on that rather briefly in the presentation. But direct view LED is starting to be sort of that flexible, really innovative medium that people are playing with, because you can do anything with it. It fits any space. It's small or large or rectangular or triangle. It doesn't matter. We can kind of do anything we want with it. And we're seeing customers really flex the way those are used. So, going up the stairway, it's following you. But we have a customer that's using it as a projector replacement because they needed a really big screen with no seams in there. So that's one of the areas we're seeing a lot of innovation in, is use of direct view LED in both retail, corporate, and healthcare spaces.
I want to get you both to comment on this, and Pat, I'll start with you, and then we'll jump over to Shari and kind of the Samsung experience. But I have heard the question before of people say, well, digital signage, I can just go down to fill in your favorite big box store right here, buy a cheap screen, and stick it up in my restaurant, in my place of work, etc. You've heard that, I'm sure, before, Pat, and talk about some of the issues with that. One of the ones that comes to my mind is the fact that these displays, often digital signage, they're always on. From what I know on consumer displays, right, they're not going to last as long. They're not made to be on all day long, even though my kids might disagree. Isn't that one of the big differences?
Yeah, so the analogy that I like to draw for people is you wouldn't take a Lamborghini and drive into a field to plow it and expect the manufacturer to hold the warranty. The TV that you would pick up from a Best Buy or a Costco to bring home, it's a Lamborghini. It's made to work, look really cool, be really fast, and sort of do all the things you want to do in a recreational way. It is not made to do those big, heavy commercial applications. Run 24 hours a day, stick it in a factory in 120-degree temperatures, stick it in a case and throw a basketball at it type of thing. A great example that calls back to some of the Samsung product that we deal with is Samsung has a product line that has what we call an IP5X rating. So that rating means dust ingress into the back of the panel is prevented in a very meaningful way. So when we have a QSR, quick serve restaurant, or we have a manufacturer who has a high dust environment, in the case of manufacturing, sometimes that dust is metal dust. That simple addition to their screen adds to the lifespan of the set by a factor of several years as opposed to several hours or months or weeks. So it's a meaningful increase in usability for the customer, and it's something they won't see. And that's sort of the thing that you got to know up front. Will you see the difference on the screen? You may not, but 10 years down the road when they're still running and you bought 4 consumer screens, you'll know it.
Yep, and then I'll add to that. That was really good. So I'll add to that. Whereas when you look at, going down to your big box and buying a consumer television versus a commercial display, you should look at the design, for example, right? So the design of a consumer television is designed for aesthetics and generally aren't appropriate for a business setting. But a commercial display is really designed with those clean, symmetrical lines, and generally, especially in Samsung, it doesn't include the manufacturer's logo because we know that a lot of people don't want to have to display the brand for multiple reasons. We have these little tags, for example, on ours that have the logo, kind of like your Levi jean tag. So if you don't want to display it, you can simply snip it, right? When you buy a consumer television, as I mentioned, it's designed for residential use. But when you buy a commercial display, just like Patrick said, it's more ruggedly constructed for high traffic areas. And those bezels that they have, or those enclosures, they've really been toughened to withstand the elements, like just you said. So the IP5X rating, so dust and grease free. That's essential if you're using it in those high traffic places, and especially in food areas. And then let's talk about brightness. So bright levels built for the home environments are typically limited to 350 nit brightness. And I won't get all geeked out about max or peak brightness, but generally most of the televisions that we look at, the max brightness is about 350 nit. But that's really not enough in most cases for a commercial environment. So for commercial displays, they're built to go from 350 to 2500 nit brightness for those outdoor displays, and many, whether they're indoor or outdoor, are designed with anti-glare screens, which means if you're putting them in an area that has a lot of ambient light, you need that so that you're able to avoid that glare, and then your messaging is not easily read. When you're talking about content play, right? When you're talking about a consumer television, you're talking about, the content that's being played is primarily TV content, or maybe something that is if you're still using a DVD player, for example. But commercial displays, they're designed to simultaneously play both broadcast TV in most cases as well as promotional content. So if you buy a commercial display that has a built-in tuner, you can still be able to do that broadcast, but you also will be able to do that content whether you're using an embedded media player or something that's external. And then also important is to talk about connectivity and control. Well, consumer televisions are really catching up as far as the different control connectors that they have. But they primarily focus on HDMI and sometimes USB. But commercial displays, they really have an expanded input panel. So they have a wider variety of inputs and outputs. And consumer televisions, not all of them, but they don't typically include RS-232 control. And if they do have it, it's limited to on and off and maybe input switching. So you really need that RS-232 and the RJ45 control to enable remote display management. So that's an example. Another thing is if you don't want your patients or your customers to be able to come in and be able to change the functions on your display, commercial displays have an IR and remote lockout so that they can't change that information. And I would also say, we talked about runtime. Your typical consumer television is designed specifically to run for 6 to 8 hours per day because it has limited onboard cooling. But commercial displays, they're built to run either from 16/7 or 24/7 hours per day, and they're warranted to do that, and they have special cooling mechanisms to have that longer runtime. Now, talk about orientation. If you want to display something in portrait or landscape, you can't always do that with a with a consumer display because they're not designed to support the cooling needs when in portrait mode. So you might be able to get it to appear, the image to appear in portrait mode, but they'll tend to overheat if you put them in portrait mode. Now let's talk about image retention issues. No matter what type of display that you're using, if you continually run the same type of content and information, you do have the ability to retain some images. When you look at a commercial display, especially the Samsung displays, we leverage different technologies that protect against image retention. Doesn't mean that you won't ever get any, but it's unlikely that you will. And warranty. So when you buy a commercial display from Samsung, it comes with a 3-year on-site warranty and post-sale support, and then you can typically buy additional support as well. But that's not so true when it comes to consumer televisions. They are typically 1 year, and when used in a commercial environment, it could void its warranty depending on who you buy it from and how you buy it.
Well, let me tell you what you just did. Go for it, Pat.
I was going to say, if I could add on to this, and this is a point that I'm sure that Samsung's team, Shari, myself, and all the folks over there could probably talk about all day. But there's a couple of points to add on to that, too. So the warranty, the question we get a lot is, well, can I just buy that consumer screen and add on a commercial warranty? When you're adding on a warranty to a product, you're adding on to the manufacturer's warranty. If the manufacturer voids the warranty, you're effectively adding on to nothing. So we get that question a lot. But the other piece, and it was sort of hit on, but the commercial bezel design and the design of the physical panel itself, we run into this every single day. Especially in conference rooms. So people are using 60, 70, 80, 90 larger screens in those conference rooms, and they're mounting them on tilt brackets. In almost every case, if you look in the consumer guide, the installation guide for a TV that you would buy from Best Buy or something to that effect, it will tell you not to tilt it. The reason being is the physical structure of the set. The bezel cannot hold the set together when you tilt it. So sometimes when you're getting to those larger sets, you even run into a safety issue from what you thought was a permanent installation falling apart because of just simple gravity.
Here's what you all both did. I had other questions. I had Gary out there. What about burn-in issues? I can check that one off because Shari went over it. Portrait versus landscape. Karen was asking about that done, and then Todd had thrown in a question about some of the warranty issues. So we covered a bunch of those in that answer, which is awesome. One last thing I want to touch on, which I saw somewhere in here, and I'll put in my own words, but it was in the question queue. And it had to do kind of with a toughness of the screens. Are these hardened? And maybe, Shari, I'll get the perspective from Samsung of what's been done there. Again, I guess I'm thinking the maliciousness side of me, the mischievous side of me back in my college days. I might have thrown a tennis ball or two at something that I shouldn't have. So what if someone decides to do that to a screen outside or something? How hardened are these?
So our outdoor displays, which are our full outdoor displays, which are the models OHF, and the F may change as we continue down our product line, but those are full outdoor displays, and they have what's called IK11, rated glass. you can't. It is it's anti-graffiti and it's anti-vandalism. You can hit it with a baseball bat, and it will not break. And what it is that it's an overlay over the glass of the actual display, so it will protect that display. It's already in its own enclosure, so those displays can actually put outside in any of those elements. That's IP56 rated, so that's dust, wind, heat, etc. For those displays, you don't need to worry about that type of, baseball bat or anything like that. Our displays that are indoor are definitely not as rugged. If someone took a baseball bat or a ball, for example, to it, yes, they could break. But we do see in places like transportation centers and places where they're not really outdoor environments, but they're rugged and rough environments, people will use our outdoor displays for those needs.
I can imagine they would. I saw someone at an airport recently leaning against a display. And I'm like,
yes.
Come on. But that's going to happen. and so hearing the hardness is a good story. Pat, let me do this. Can I ask you to back up one slide? Because a couple folks want to see that URL. You had some contact information on slide 31 there. So, folks, video series available that you can watch, connection.com/digital signage videos, and you can check those out. And again, if you are already associated with Connection, you have team members, they can get you more information. They can get Pat's team on the line, again, for whether it's a 15-minute or an hour-long conversation. Pat and his team happy to explore opportunities and examples with you. Really want to thank both Pat and Shari for being on board. A lot of good stuff here, and again, we asked a couple of questions and covered a whole lot of territory there. So I think we covered a majority of the kind of buckets of questions I'd put together. So I want to thank you both for doing that. Really want to thank, obviously, all of you in attendance for being on board. Hope this was informational. If there's anything that you missed, we have recorded the session, so we should have an archive available that we can share. Typically, a reminder email will go out. One other thing that's going to happen, we close down the WebEx here in just about 30 seconds. A short little survey is going to pop on 5 questions, less than a minute, to give us a little feedback. And we would appreciate that feedback. Just helps us keep track of these events and make sure they're delivering on the promises and the things that you all are looking for in terms of information and insights here. So that's really going to wrap it up. I, again, appreciate the Samsung team for sponsoring today's event and the Connection team for getting it out there to everyone in the audience. On behalf of Pat and of Shari and all the team members behind the scenes, my name's James Hilliard, and we do look forward to talking to you all down the road.